Ricky Tiedemann has been tearing up the Arizona Fall League to the point where he's actually been the best pitcher in the league itself. Not only is he one of the brightest prospects in the Blue Jays system, he's one of the brightest prospects in all of baseball. So we'll break down his magnificent performance and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Now, Ricky Tiedemann has been tearing up the Arizona Fall League. He's leading the league in strikeouts. He's looking like Ricky Tiedemann that has been advertised all season long. I mean, this stuff looks sharp. They're slowly building up his workload. He's pitching more and more each outing, and he's looking good. He's looking like a prime candidate to maybe make the club out of spring training next year. Not sure if it'll happen right away, but he definitely seems that he will play a part in 2024 for the Toronto Blue Jays, and it's very exciting to think about because there's some openings in that pitching staff, and I'm sure Ricky Tiedemann could definitely fill that void.
Yeah, his innings are getting worked up a lot, and like we're discussing in our streams and our videos, he's a guy who could change everything for the Blue Jays and change the way that this front office looks at the outlook of this offseason. But before we get into that, make sure to hit the subscribe button. About 70% of you guys aren't subscribed. We're on the road to 10,000. Now, Peter, Ricky Tiedemann, he's been performing in the Arizona Fall League. A few of the Jays prospects have been, and the Arizona Fall League is a league that we signed Nate Pearson last year to help develop his innings, and it worked out for him to a degree. But Ricky Tiedemann, seeing him there is phenomenal, especially after his fairly solid and healthy, at the very least, minor league season. But this was from his last start, which was a couple of days ago. He finished with 3 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 5 strikeouts. Ricky Tiedemann now leads Arizona Fall League pitchers in strikeouts following another dominant start. Now, Peter, the Arizona Fall League is pretty competitive. There's a lot of good players there, tons of good players there. And to see Ricky Tiedemann continue to do very, very solid and for the most part dominate, obviously gives up a couple runs here and there, but his pitch count's going up. He only pitched 3 innings in this start, but his previous 2, he pitched 5 innings, and he only pitched 3 because the game was only 7 innings. So his innings are getting ramped up. His strikeouts aren't stopping, and he is a guy that we didn't think maybe would make the team at a spring training, but it's looking more and more likely that he'll at least have a chance to compete with Alek Manoah for it.
Absolutely. And another guy I want to give a shout out to is Damiano
Yeah.
Palmegiani, who's been tearing the cover off the ball in the Arizona Fall League. He's climbing up the Blue Jays prospect rankings as well. He's looked really good. Third base, could play a little bit of first base, and someone to keep an eye on as well if you're a Blue Jay fan. But when it comes to Ricky Tiedemann, I mean, the stuff is just undeniable. He might have the best stuff in the entire Blue Jays organization, and that's including guys like Jose Barrios, Kevin Gausman, Nate Pearson. Like, he's up there. His raw potential just makes him in that stratosphere that most prospects are just not in. So he's definitely going to have success at the big league level. It just depends on when. And one comparison that I continuously make with Ricky Tiedemann is that of Eury Perez of the Miami Marlins, which is, if you look at the way that the Marlins handled his innings this year, he was 20 years old. They called him up a couple of weeks into the season. They gave him a few starts. They ramped him up all the way up to like 65 to 70 innings. Then they sent him back down and they called him back up for a playoff push towards the end of the season, and it ultimately worked out for them. So I think the Jays can kind of follow a similar path with Ricky Tiedemann in the sense that they manage his innings, they control his workload, and then call him up for a stretch run, and he's going to be one of your better guys just because he's fresh and he's got the stuff to do it. So it's exciting to watch him just carve these guys up in the Arizona Fall League. It's a very competitive league with a lot of good prospects, and Ricky Tiedemann doesn't look out of place whatsoever.
Yeah, so there's a few ways that we can go about it, or the Jays can go about it, and you said it yourself, the Paris thing. The thing is, you can either start with Ricky Tiedemann at the start of next season, you could bring him in maybe in a bullpen role. I don't think they're going to do that necessarily, or they bring him up, let him pitch for a bit, bring him back down, continue to monitor his workload, because they don't want to have what happened to Alek Manoah and Nate Pearson to a degree happen to Ricky Tiedemann in the sense of getting overworked your first 2 years with innings pitched. And we discussed this on one of our videos and streams. Manoah had 300 innings pitched, or 3 innings short of 300 innings pitched in 2 seasons after barely pitching in the minors much. And looking at Ricky Tiedemann's stats here, the only thing that's been limiting him throughout his minor league career so far has been his innings pitched, and that's one of the reasons we probably haven't seen him in the big leagues yet. He's pitched 13 innings in the Arizona Fall League through 3 starts, so that's a very, very solid number, especially given the type of league that it is. In Double-A, he pitched 32 innings, 44 in 2023 and things like that. So, Peter, 73 innings last year in 2022. This year he pitched about 44, not including some starts there. So He's very, very solid. His innings are getting worked up. The only issue is if he'll be able to get enough innings before spring training to actually be able to, I guess make an impact on the club, because the stuff is there, the raw stuff is there. The only issue is, like I said, the innings pitch, because they're not going to rush him, and maybe they bring him up and then bring him back down, like you said with the Marlins player there. But it's an interesting case, especially with the way he's been performing throughout the whole fall league, and he's a plus plus pitcher. He has a plus plus fastball, a plus plus changeup, and his slider's even developing, and his grades continuing to go up. And he's just an elite player, and I'm super excited. I'm just not worried, but I'm cautiously optimistic about his workload heading into the spring training.
Yeah, as we should be. But the difference between him and Manoah was that Manoah came up when he was a little bit older. He pitched in college as well. Ricky Tiedemann was just straight to minor league baseball, and there's a difference between the two. Manoah never got hurt. Tiedemann kind of on and off the injured list. So you just want to see him stay healthy because the stuff is really good. And you could tell that the Blue Jays were really cautious with him this year. He got hurt and he didn't pitch for about a month. He didn't even
Yeah.
like throw for about a month just because of a bicep strain. So it's not a major injury by any stretch, but you don't want it to aggravate itself and to get worse. So I think his innings would have been a little bit higher had he not been sidelined on the injured list this year. But he's a blue chip prospect, and you don't want to rush these guys. You don't want to kill their confidence early on, because we saw him in spring training. His first outing was dominant, and everyone was talking about, oh, let's get him on the big league team. Let's do this, let's do that. Then his next outing, if I'm not mistaken, against the Pirates, he gave up like 4 earned runs, or he gave up a grand slam or something, and everyone was starting to pump the brakes on him a little bit. So we got to give him a bit more time to let him marinate in AAA. I want to see him face some more experienced hitters in AAA, and he's going to go ahead and do that this year. But definitely at some point in the 2024 season, Ricky Tiedemann is going to get the call. Just don't know in what capacity. But yeah, it's all about building him up and ramping up the workload so he can handle the rigors of a major league season, because he's never encountered anything like it.
And he's almost, he's among one of the most valuable prospects on the list by MLB Pipeline. You can see here he's ranked 31st, and that's continued to climb. He's alongside some really good names. He's the second best left-handed pitcher according to this website. But when looking at how it could affect the Jays in the future, specifically, they're not going to use him as a trade chip, I highly doubt. But heading into this spring training, the options for a fifth starter spot as it stands right now are, Alek Manoah is the leading one. You have Bowden Francis, and you have potentially bringing back Hyun-Jin Ryu. But Peter, if they think that they can, I'll ask you the question, bring up Ricky Tiedemann early, do you think that they, maybe it maybe limits their ability, or I guess limits their wantingness to actually, get a free agent in the market this offseason, especially with all their internal options they have with Alek Manoah, Bowden Francis, and all of those guys? Or do you think that maybe they still get a veteran guy to take over the fifth starter spot and leave Ricky Tiedemann to develop in AAA?
I think they're going to buy themselves time before Ricky Tiedemann is ready to come up. And what I mean by that is that Bowden Francis and Alek Manoah figure to be the guys to start. Maybe they go with a six-man rotation at times if the Jays play a lot of games in a lot of days. So there's ways around it to buy Ricky Tiedemann time before he's ready to come up to the majors. But yeah, I think that's the most likely avenue. I don't see them spending on another starter just because they have some pretty good consistency in that rotation, and you don't want to lock anyone down for multiple years, because then you're handcuffing Ricky Tiedemann.
Yeah.
If you have your five guys set in stone for years to come, then there's no pathway for him to really make an impact unless you kick someone out of the rotation, unless you go with a six-man rotation. So I think they're going to go with a stopgap with Manoah and Bowden Francis this year. And then 2025 is really going to be the year that I have circled on my calendar for Ricky Tiedemann to be on the rotation right away. And I think Kikuchi's probably going to be gone by then because his contract is going to be over. You're going to have Bassett on his last year. Kevin Gausman is going to be another year into his contract. So you're going to have your five guys. Manoah's probably going to be there if everything works out this offseason and if he can iron out those things with the Blue Jays front office. But yeah, I see a pathway for Ricky Tiedemann to make the team this year, but not as a full-time guy. And next year is not next year. 2025 is really where I see him being that full-time starter for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, and it's gonna be very, very interesting to see what he does. Obviously, it affects the Blue Jays season or off season going forward, but I agree with you. I think ultimately they'll just rock with their internal options. They have a lot of good ones, and hopefully, if Alek Manoah can bounce back, this won't really be a question. But one final thing, looking at his ETA for Ricky Tiedemann there, it's 2024, which is the upcoming season. So I think he makes an impact. It's probably going to be later on in the season, and maybe even crossing our fingers in a playoff run that hopefully goes deeper than what it has been since 2016. But that'll wrap up the video. Let us know what your thoughts are on Ricky Tiedemann in the comment section below. If you want to check out our video from yesterday, click on the screen now. And hopefully the Jays are going to make some big offseason moves this offseason after the World Series wraps up. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.